Hi, I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Kaylee, and this is
Shoot the Vows. Today we have a really special guest, and I always say a special guest because all of our guests are special, obviously. We have Carl Smith with the Manor House in Pierpont, New York. Mm-hmm. Can you do a little self-introduction for us?
Yes. So my name's Carl Smith. I'm the venue manager at the Manor House in Pierpont Manor, New York. And Kaylee and Caitlin invited me to do the podcast, so I'm just excited to kind of chit-chat with you guys and talk about weddings.
Well, we're so glad to have you on. I know we love your venue. We literally talk about it all the time.
No, thank you.
Number one on the list. Yeah, I think that what I really enjoyed, so the first time I ever worked at your venue, and to this day, you're the only venue manager, owner that's ever done this. Mm-hmm. You came up to us, and to my second shooter, this is also very memorable. We were talking about this the other day. You came up to us and you said, hey, as photographers, do you have any opinions on what could be changed or improved upon? Mm-hmm. And I respected that so much because there's so many venues, they've been around for 20, 50, however many years, and they're just like, this is what you get.
Right.
And they don't really care to make it any better.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was amazing that you did that.
No, yeah. I mean, that's kind of, I would say in general, how we've kind of approached, I'm sure we'll get into the backstory and everything, but in general, how we kind of approach everything kind of at the Manor House, where since I specifically don't have a very extensive background in weddings, especially when we first got into it. A lot of it was just asking questions and really getting feedback from people like yourself who had more experience than, we did initially when we purchased the venue. So yeah, that's kind of just where that came from. And, we try to keep that mentality with our staff too, where we're trying to be as accommodating as possible. I mean, we're in the accommodation business. That's what it is. So yeah, that's just kind of along those lines.
Well, we didn't have a ton of critiques, so
no, I think it was one was I think it was Dan who had mentioned an extra hook on the arbor. I'm pretty sure
hanging dresses.
Yeah,
that's always my number one complaint about venues is there might be a gorgeous place to hang the dress, but there's no way to hang it.
Right.
And come on, every photographer is looking for a spot.
Right.
So one thing I've done before is I've brought command hooks because they're pretty destructive.
Right.
And I'll put those up sometimes, but I tend to leave them for the next photographer, which is so nice of me, but it's not nice for me because then I forget to buy more.
Right.
So
right. No, stuff like that. I mean, like we were talking a little bit about before, there's so many vendors that are involved in a wedding day. It's, next to impossible to really know what everyone needs unless you ask.
For sure.
That's, again, that's what we kind of have our staff kind of do is really just try to be as helpful as possible, not trying to be, which I've noticed a lot coming from the outside into the wedding industry, is there are a lot of vendors who are like, this is the way I do it. I'm not really going to change.
Take it or leave it.
Right. Type of mentality, which, didn't necessarily rub me the right way. So, we try to not be like that as much as possible.
Well, and it shows that you guys care.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because you're willing to make the changes that need to happen. Not that there are any, but
no, yeah. And I always, and I tell this to our staff all the time, is that you're never going to be perfect. So really the goal every year for the venue is just to improve in some aspect, whether it's how we, communicate or the types of guides and files or whatever we're sharing with couples, how we interact with vendors, whatever it is, as long as, something improves, then you're on the right track. As soon as you get stagnant and kind of, not changing anything, vendors notice it, your couples notice it, your staff notices it. So it can get pretty stale pretty quickly. So
yeah, well, from where I'm coming from as a photographer, obviously I haven't learned everything ever. Now, with that being said, I think that you can nail down a system that works really well. And when you follow it, it's just everything's very smooth. However, I'm always trying to build on top of that. You know what I mean? Or change things out where I could save time, or we could save money, or we could make our couples' lives easier, or things like that.
We're only human. We only improve. You know what I mean? All you can do is take the criticism and the advice and fix it. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like make it not a problem for the next person.
Right.
Yeah. So tell me about how the Manor House came about, because you told me recently it wasn't always a wedding venue, right?
Yeah, so it's historically, initially, so the main building was built in 1823. So it is registered as a National Historic Site for New York State and for the nation.
It's awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Where the original owners, his name was William Pierpont, and his family had built it as like a fishing and hunting camp. Originally in the 1800s. And they were a wealthy family out of New York City. So they would come up to the North Country and, hunt and fish and kind of spend their holidays up here. Eventually, they ended up purchasing a large majority of the land in northern New York. So kind of like Jefferson, a lot of Oswego, a lot of Onondaga County, and the North St. Lawrence, that whole kind of area.
Oh, wow. They had a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they pretty much own that whole swath of land. And then over the mid 1800s through the late 1800s, they sold it off slowly and gave deeds out to different plots of land in the North Country. So that's how they made a lot of their money, but they kept the Manor House with their family. I'm not sure of the exact date, but for a good portion of the 1800s. And then it exchanged hands a few times. Then it became like a bed and breakfast for a while. And then it was actually dilapidated for at least a decade, I want to say, at one point. And then the owners we purchased it from, they had revived it. And I think a family actually before them too had helped. They revived it in the early 90s, I want to say. And then we purchased it from them. So it's got a lot of character and history to it.
For sure.
And it's, definitely a unique spot. So
It's my favorite part. Is
Yeah.
all the history and all the like architecture and like, oh, it's so beautiful.
yeah, you can definitely feel the character when you're in there. And I know it also had ties to the Underground Railroad initially, and when people would run during the Prohibition era from Canada down to New York City. There's a lot of, if you go into the basement, there's a lot of these kind of hidden, walled off kind of cavities in the basement
wow.
that, they would, I don't know exactly what they were doing with those spaces, but they were there for something. So super unique.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
that's really I just
No.
that's really cool.
I think that one of the things that we really like about it is Kaylee will be the first to throw her arms up in the air and say she hates barn venues. But in New York, it's so easy to erect a barn and say, all right, we got a new venue here. And I mean, I get it. And it's definitely in right now. But I think that if you're looking for a venue that's not a barn, the Manor House is a really good option.
Well, it has just such a gorgeous ballroom-esque feel in your reception space. And then outside, it's just this gorgeous, like, floral garden and, like, I'm
Let's
obsessed.
talk about we need to talk about the garden. Let's move on to the garden.
Sure.
So was that always there? Did you guys put that in?
No, so yeah, when we, I want to say 2 owners previous to us, so in the 70s and 80s, they had initially put in a good portion of the gardens, probably about half. And then the owners we purchased it from, they had owned it in the 90s and early 2000s. They expanded those gardens probably to 75% to what it is today, and put a lot of the hardscaping, so the concrete paths, all of that was there.
There's the tree in the middle of
yes.
the...
So that was there when we purchased it. And then the gardeners that we have that work for us now, their name are Dan and Mary Beth. They're fantastic. Shout out to you guys. They're actually from Fulton.
Oh, wow.
And Brewerton. So
They
they're,
do really
yeah,
good.
I
they're
love
amazing.
it. Oh.
And Dan, he is actually a horticulturalist. He has gardening, architectural design background, and he came in and really expanded the gardens to what they are today, made a whole lot of changes that just modernized it a little bit, and now in total we have just over 30,000 square foot of garden bed in the gardens now. So it's really, for us, the main attraction for the venue.
As you can tell, for
Yeah.
us, it's also appealing.
Right. Yep.
Well, but like it's usually if you have like the garden-esque vibe, like you don't always get that ballroom like feel inside.
Right.
And so it's like literally that perfect mix of like elegant and classy and outdoorsy, but not like in the woods outdoorsy,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, no, and that's, I think, what makes it the most unique is that you can have, and that's what we tell couples all the time, is that it's perfect for couples who want that indoor outdoor aspect, which is super popular now, but still want the ballroom that's a little bit more formal. And the gardens really just take the edge off the ballroom a little bit.
Yeah.
So you can still, if people want to hang out outside on the patio in the gardens, they can. If people want to dance and stay inside, they can.
And there's
So
air
it's nice.
conditioning inside.
Yes. Well, and
That is such a bonus.
I think it was like 2 years ago, maybe a year, 2 years ago. I forget who it was, but a photographer came in and they were like, "Do you guys have AC?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course we have AC." And they're like, "Well, most venues we work with, especially at barns, a lot of them don't have AC."
Yeah.
And I thought that was insane.
It's
I'm like,
brutal.
especially we work, through the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd think
That's
that'd
one
be
of our
the-
busiest
Or
months.
most popular times a year.
Yeah.
We have some crazy heat stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have a lot of couples that don't consider. They're like, well, it'll be maybe 80 and it'll be hot. Well, we've had people have heat strokes.
Yeah.
We've had people like
Pass out.
I have couples that get very flush. Just, that's their body, how their body reacts to heat. And so they're like really red in their photos. And I think that people underestimate because it's New York. They're
Right.
like, well, we're not down south. It's not a big deal.
Right.
It's like, well, it gets pretty
Till
hot
we get
here.
that 1 week where it's 90, 98 all week.
So last June, there was not a single weekend wedding that I had. And I had one every single weekend, I think. Where it was less than 90 degrees.
Yep.
And not a single venue had air conditioning.
That's insane.
Yep.
It was terrible.
Well, especially because even with AC in the ballroom, we have, 2 rooftop units that are supposed to cool 30,000 square foot. And our ballroom's just under like 3,000 square foot.
Yeah.
But with all, the grandparents and older uncles and aunts that attend weddings, even we have, some trouble, they need it cooler or it's, they need
people
the
are
air
dancing
circulation. Right.
and moving and
Exactly.
breathing with their
Well,
mouths.
and
Yeah.
how many people can your venue hold?
So our max capacity is 150. What we tell people is our comfortable max capacity is 140. So basically 140 is kind of that ideal number, but we can get up to 150 if we have to.
Well, people don't consider like your DJ needs a spot, your
Right.
cake needs a spot, your cards and gifts need a spot.
Right.
Like there's a lot of space that isn't necessarily inhabited by tables that you still
Right.
need.
Well,
So-
and your vendors. Like at the
Yes.
end of the day, your caterers, your photographer, your videographer, like
Mm-hmm.
they all have to have somewhere for, so that it limits the space a little
Right.
bit. But
But no, I would say in general, we try to aim for couples who are looking for, smaller, more intimate style weddings, but also for couples who are looking to give each guest a little bit more of an experience. So basically spending more money per guest versus inviting more people and spending less money per guest.
Right.
So, adding on nicer cocktails or, doing a bigger hors d'oeuvre spread during cocktail hour. So stuff like that where you can improve the
Photo
experience.
booth.
Right. Photo booths. Exactly. Do you guys do photo booths?
Yeah, we
We
do.
do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah, we
excellent.
do.
Is that new this year?
No,
Oh.
we've been there before with photo
Oh,
booth.
that's right. The first time you guys came was at the photo
Dominique
booth.
and Brian's.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That was
exactly.
fun. And you have a
so yeah.
perfect little corner for it.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's honestly so beautiful in that corner by itself that we don't even need to bring the backdrop. In my opinion, just saying.
Yeah.
It's so pretty.
No, so it's so yeah, that's I think also we kind of got lucky. It wasn't intentional at all with when we purchased the venue just after COVID. That I think in general the direction of the wedding industry was going towards smaller weddings and guest counts dropping. So that just ended up working well. Also, I would say, I don't know what your guys' opinion is, but we're probably on the tail end of the barn kind of rustic trend.
I think so, yeah.
I have a lot of brides who, come and the first thing they say is, I just want anything but a barn.
Yeah,
I've
Yes.
been
do
So
told-
we're
that
starting to hear it more, and
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I know, because they're like, I've been to 4 barn weddings this year and I cannot step foot in a barn again. So that, again, is just works in our favor.
It's really
as well.
funny. I actually this morning, so I have been learning Japanese for a few years, and I have several Japanese teachers in Japan, and we were talking about the differences this morning of like weddings here and weddings there, and they were like, well, where do people usually get married there? And I told her a barn, and she was like, what? And I had to like pull up photos, and she was like, oh my gosh, you're serious?
Yeah. What do they do in Japan? Is it more just like,
so they're not Christian, so it's very weird.
Right.
They have chapels inside of hotels,
okay,
and they get married in them. But again, they're not religious at all.
Right.
So it's really kind of just for show.
the backdrop? Okay.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay.
But
And then they have like hotel ballroom style.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they kind of do that sort of thing.
Okay.
Oh.
And I'm sure do they typically go kind of like over the top? Are they usually huge weddings?
So
or?
usually they don't have. I don't think they do like an 8-hour ordeal like they do in America.
Okay.
I'll have to ask. I
Yeah.
think that they do like a lot of Asian culture, they'll actually do their photos a separate day. So
Okay.
they'll go into like a photo studio and they'll
Right.
get like those kind of photos.
Yep.
I can't imagine anyone in America
I
doing
know.
that. But yeah, they'll like go into a studio, they'll like rent kimono and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll wear like special traditional outfits and stuff. So it's very different.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
they've kind of taken some of our stuff. They cut the cake and
Yeah.
they like do some of that fun stuff.
Right.
So
No, my
Yeah.
wife's Thai actually. So weddings in Thailand are a huge ordeal.
Oh, I love that.
They're, super, super over the top. Very, families will spend a lot of money, which
Yeah.
people do here too.
Yeah.
But I think the mentality is a little bit different in Asian culture, where here, people get praised and lauded for like how much money they saved.
yeah.
Whereas in Asian culture, it's like you get your stripes, on your badge by spending more money.
Yeah,
That's
I've
how
heard
you
that.
show,
South
your-
Korea too.
Yeah.
It's like a competitive thing.
Right.
How much money you could spend on your
Right.
wedding. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we have the culture we have here.
I know,
'Cause no,
right?
thank you.
Seriously.
Yeah.
No,
So tell us a little bit. I've always been curious. Have you had any issues with the lovely pollinators of New York in your garden?
So like butterflies, bees, stuff.
Specifically bees.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. So, and I'll talk a little bit about mosquitoes too, because that's interesting as well.
It's a
which-
separate
This is
issue.
all stuff I've learned since we've been in the gardens, where it's basically the way, the property is set up is, you guys know, there's this pretty thick tree line around the entire border of the property. And it basically creates this mini ecosystem. So, we've tracked the temperature, even on the hottest days in the summer, the temperature is always 2 to 3 degrees cooler because of the tree line.
Interesting.
A lot of the plants most of them are native, other than the annuals, obviously, but all of the native plants will bloom usually a week to 2 weeks later than the other plants, around in that area, just because it's a few degrees cooler. So they're a little bit late to the bloom period. When it comes to pollinators, bees specifically, so there's one plant that we plant every year. It's called salvia. And it's pretty much one of our staple plants in the gardens.
Is it the purple?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll
with
put
those
a
tall
picture up.
spikes. Yeah.
We'll put a picture up.
Right
They're so
here.
Yeah, you guys have some
beautiful.
great photos of them. So the salvia is one of our staple plants for a few reasons. One, it's pollinator friendly, and our gardeners Dan is a super holistic kind of gardener. He
I love
doesn't
that.
like to use fertilizer. He's plants things that pollinators will like.
Hashtag save the bees.
Yes. And I promise you, I don't know if you guys come, do you guys have a wedding like July or August? Do you know?
I have, I'll be there in September, but no, not July
Okay.
or August.
It might still be in September. I'm not sure. But in middle summer, tail end of summer, in the salvia, we'll probably, obviously we haven't counted, but there are hundreds of bees in those beds. And we have never had an instance of anyone getting bitten at all.
Yeah, I never had any issues. There was one on the groom's back, and he was not happy about it. I just picked him off, and he like flew away. And I think that bees are very friendly compared to like wasps. I don't want wasps.
Yeah,
I don't want hornets.
Right.
Bees don't want to hurt you by any means. Like they're just trying to get their flowers and go on home.
Well, and that's the thing, especially when they just have a buffet in front of them. The last thing they want to worry about is stinging somebody.
Yeah,
right.
Even like our gardeners, when they go into the salvia, they'll have to deadhead everything, probably once a week. And Mary Beth, who does that most often, she'll get stung a little bit here and there, but it's not most of them are bumblebees. So they're the little fat guys.
Yeah.
And they're not really super aggressive. It's, she's kind of getting stung because she has to get in there.
Yeah, she's in it and scared of them.
It's not like they're trying to attack her or swarm her or anything. But yeah, the bees, super plentiful. The butterflies are, again, countless. There's so many butterflies throughout the year.
That's so cool.
I love that.
So yeah, pollinator wise, super, super popular.
Do you purposely let out butterflies? Like I know some people like.
Yeah, no. So actually, I didn't know that was an option because that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, you can get actual I don't know about up here,
my
but down
friends,
south, there's butterfly kits, and you can like grow your own butterflies and release them.
Well, my friends got married, and they had, and I don't know how ethical this is, but they had boxes of butterflies, and after the ceremony, everyone opened them up, and they flew.
That's pretty cool.
It was very dramatic.
Yeah,
I love that. Honestly.
You should offer that.
That's interesting.
Would you like butterflies in your ceremony?
That's interesting because really, we'll have we've noticed only 3 main species of butterfly. It's like this white one. I'm not sure what the name is. Obviously, monarchs are popular, and then there's one other yellow and black one. There's really only those 3 that we'll see the most often.
Well, monarchs were endangered for a really long time there for a minute.
Are they okay now?
They're better than what they were, but they're definitely not where they should be.
Right. But not the bad thing, but since we're, pretty much in the middle of just farmland, we're kind of the only, ecosystem for a lot of those local animals.
That makes sense.
So, we get a lot of, we have a full population of chipmunks that live in the gardens.
I saw last time. They're so cute.
Yeah, they're much better. They used to get into the roots of the plants.
Oh no!
And we're starting to think they just did it by accident because now they've created a whole tunnel system and it doesn't affect any of the plants anymore.
Wow.
So I don't know if they're just being nice or what's going on, but
they appreciate your effort.
Yeah, like chipmunks, rabbits, deer, which do hack away at the plants a little bit.
I think that people don't really appreciate how much effort goes into that. It takes us an hour and a half to water these plants,
if not longer,
at least once a week. And I think that having an entire staff dedicated to that just goes to show that it's literally a full-time job taking care of it. And it's beautiful, but consider that when you're looking at these venues, how much work goes into that.
Yeah, no, and I would say, most of our time and a huge portion of our budget in terms of maintaining the property overall goes into the gardens.
Yeah.
From buying, annuals every year, which we'll put in anywhere from 300 to 350 plants in every year as annuals.
Wow. Yeah.
To just maintaining it, weeding, deadheading. It really, really does take a lot. You can't just put a plant in the ground and just have it do its thing. Right.
Yeah.
You really got to take care of it.
Well, you can really tell with your venue that there's a lot of love and dedication, especially in that garden. And the whole venue itself, the whole house, the whole reception space, it's all gorgeous. I love the girls getting ready suite.
Yes.
But it really goes to show how much time and effort y'all put into that garden.
No,
I think it pays off too, though, because when people say hey, I'm looking for a garden venue, I'm like,
Manor House.
That's the first thing I think of. I actually can't really think of many other ones at all.
Yeah, there really aren't any. There's definitely venues that have gardens.
Yeah,
but I don't think there's really any other venue that I know of super local that's that's the main
like
point.
get married in the garden.
Right.
And the fact that you can literally open your reception space to that outdoor area. It is stunning because you're right there with the garden. You've got pretty lights in the trees.
Yeah, the cocktail hours right there. You guys have a fire pit too.
Yes.
So the fun can continue.
Right. Yep. Which that typically gets used later in the night once people have a few drinks and guitars get whipped out usually. That's usually the hardest place to be like, okay, reception's done. Let's get out of here.
Pack on up now.
People just want to hang out by the fire, which is fair. I love fires too. So
yeah, that makes sense.
But,
Are you guys more of like an everything included venue or like, well, here's our list of like vendors that we recommend?
Yeah, great question. So initially when we started, I alluded to it a little bit in the beginning where I didn't have a whole lot of wedding industry experience coming into it. So initially, we were like, okay, we're just going to offer the venue and then, build a vendor list over time and kind of, have couples use outside vendors to kind of provide a lot of those services, which we do pretty much still the same thing now with some caveats. So now, for example, we'll do the bar in-house, catering. We have a really close partnership with a company called 24 Carats Catering.
And their food is
Your
so
next
good.
24 carats.
Yeah.
You're coming on.
And they work out of Watertown. Her name's Lindsay. She's fantastic to work with. So we have a really close partnership with them. But in general, we still do have an open vendor policy. So as long as vendors are, insured and have wedding experience, they're more than welcome to work at the venue. And, especially over the last couple of years, we've seen that flexibility has been valuable to a lot of couples because they have more control over their budget. So that's, what we found works best for us.
Makes sense.
So you definitely offer like, here's our most reasonable, here's our what we recommend, and you're free to choose and pick what you want.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll give them a preferred vendors list with, vendors that we've worked with in the past that we trust and, believe in, like you guys are obviously on there. And then we also have a blacklist. So, vendors beware. No.
Please do not come.
Which I do think is important, honestly, for any other,
I agree.
venue owners. It's it sounds daunting to have a blacklist, but there are vendors.
There's some people that deserve to be on there.
Yeah,
we've had some run-ins. I had a terrible experience with a caterer, and we have a wedding with them tomorrow, and I'm like, I'm bringing a snack just in case.
Yeah,
no, like it was bad.
Yeah,
like,
we just put a caterer on there a couple weeks ago. That you don't want to do it, but it's like if we're going to have an open vendor policy, we can't. The problem we run into is that the couple knows they hired their own catering company, but the guests don't know.
Right.
They may think the food's still from the venue. They may think, everything's coming from the venue. So it is a fine line between, letting couples have that flexibility, but also making sure that whoever does come reflects the venue well as well. So,
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then you said maybe there were possible plans to accommodate for lodging in the future.
Yeah. So the venue right now has a second and third floor. Like I mentioned, it used to be a bed and breakfast. So in total, I believe there's, I want to say 9 bedrooms, pretty much already set, ready to go. They're just still stuck in the 60s and 70s in terms of how they look. So those still need to be renovated. Over the past few years, we've kind of focused on the bridal suite, the groom's room, the patio as far as renovations go. So that's kind of the next step in terms of, improvements for the venue. But really, once that's kind of done, this year is the first year we brought on a chapel across the street. So now we have our indoor kind of covered space.
Oh, so that's newer.
Yes. So we just brought that on this year.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think rain plans are like a must-have for couples.
Yes.
Especially in New York. If you're getting married in May, like you should almost plan on rain.
Right. And especially the way we're laid out, you can't really have your ceremony inside. We've done it before, but logistically it's just difficult. So having the chapel, it's right across the street from us. So we rent that during wedding season.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you don't own it. You kind of like collaborated with someone
Yes.
local. Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
Good
the
idea,
church owns
Wow.
it. Still, it's an Episcopal church. It's actually the diocese in Onondaga that owns it. And we reached out to them, and they don't use it, so it's not an active church.
Oh, okay.
So they just rent it out to us during the wedding season, and then we can just use it for ceremonies as needed. We haven't had to use it yet, which is great. Usually, we have umbrellas. We'll postpone ceremonies because most of the couples that book with us, they want to have their ceremony in the gardens. So we'll make sure
Rightfully
that
so.
happens. Right. We'll make sure that happens first before, moving to the chapel if we have to. But so the chapel's new. The accommodations, that's like 2 or 3 years down the road, probably. And then next, probably this off season, we're looking at kind of doing a refresh of the ballroom. We did a refresh of the bridal lounge and bridal suite this past off season.
Yeah, it looks great.
Just doing, lighter colors, kind of just brightening it up a little bit.
That's my favorite part about it. It looks so clean,
Yes.
and elegant, and modern.
Right. And that's what we're going to try and continue into the ballroom this coming off season.
Oh, that's
is the
awesome.
I
goal.
wouldn't say modern's the right word to use because it
Yes.
does still have that like antique-y, like historic feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Not modern, but
It
not
is-
60s.
It's clean. Yeah, it's very clean and elegant.
Right. It's the TikTok term because what we basically did for all the redesign stuff is we took pictures of it and then asked Gemini, how can we make this look modern but still keep that vintage edge? And it literally gave us the exact photo of what we did,
Oh, wow.
which was pretty amazing. But the term is vintage modern. So it's like a
Oh,
mix of the
okay.
two where it's
Interesting.
you have, modern touches like that modern kind of gold aesthetic, but still, keeping that. I'm not an interior designer, so I don't really know exactly.
She went
what
to
that
school
means.
for it,
Oh, did you
actually.
really?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I went to
Yeah.
college for it.
Oh, okay, excellent. So I might actually tap into you a little bit because we really just relied on AI, which luckily worked. But
Yeah, I'm not good at that either.
Yeah.
Like whatsoever.
the interior or the AI stuff.
Interior design.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can't.
For me, I'm just too indecisive with stuff.
Yeah. I just don't know what looks good.
I
When
love
we
everything
designed this
antique.
space, I was like, Kaylee, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Plants.
Well, it looks great. I mean, it looks fantastic. So,
Yeah.
no, I really actually might reach out to you about that because
Yeah.
that's hard to find people that do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least if you do find someone, they want to charge you,
$100,000.
Astronomical.
a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of money to do it.
Yeah, and like my biggest thing is like antique stores, like those are gonna be your best friend,
Yeah.
especially for that like a little. You have the historic space,
Yep.
utilize it, play off.
Oh,
of
if you go to Bowkville, have you ever been to
No,
Bowkville?
what's that?
So it's out. You know where Munsville is?
Yep.
Okay, it's out kind of near Munsville.
Okay.
It's
They
a
have
whole
a
strip.
They have a whole antique festival every year.
Ah.
Is it a festival?
I know there's a literally whole street out there, and that every like third house is an
It's just
antique
antique.
store around this
they
whole
have
road.
They have
Wow.
a ton.
It's so cool.
But every year they have like booths, and it's like a whole thing. So you should
Interesting.
check that out. And there you get good deals too.
Well, what's nice, with the antique stuff is that it's much higher quality. Like now, if you want to buy something online,
No, it's just garbage
yeah,
from
it's either
Amazon.
like you get a couple years out of it, and then you
Yeah.
have to replace it, or you can spend the money to get something a little bit more durable, but then it costs you thousands of dollars just to get something like that. So, no, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Definitely look
absolutely.
into that for sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the
Yeah.
podcast. We
Had
really,
so much fun chit chatting.
yeah, we had a great time.
No, absolutely.
I can't wait to come back.
It was a pleasure, and like I said, I love working with you guys, and
Right back at you. We
yeah.
rant and rave about you guys all the time.
No,
To literally anybody who will
Yeah, we
listen.
really do.
no, well, we appreciate that, and this was super fun. So if you guys ever are in a pinch and need an extra guest, I'm always happy. So
Yeah, thank you so much.
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. If you have any questions or topic requests, drop them down below.
If you can't tell, we absolutely love the Manor House. And thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.